Mesdames, Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps we should start with or without a numerous public. We're the best on earth, so we don't really need anyone else. Do you agree? Totally agree. Right. Those of you who is here? The three of us, the four of us? The panelists. Panelists are here, that's the most important. Up or down? Where do you feel comfortable?
We stay down and the audience.
Never put your enemy above you. High ground first.
That's why we should be at the low.
We're filled. Okay.
So somebody named can see the question.
Right, I prepared a short text. Let's all stay very informally. I believe that this type of discussion certainly does not need a formal, context. We can all talk about things of great importance, time, matter, and design, and we'll try and be as coherent as possible. So I prepared this text. I thought it would be rather more formal. It's a real pleasure for me to moderate this round table, which isn't round and isn't a table, on time perceptions and design. Hesitated on a comma. Is it time, comma, perceptions and design, or is it time, perceptions and design? They both work. So I suppose you've noticed that I'm not Mrs. Karin Andraos, as was announced in the official program. She asked me to replace her at the last moment, explaining that I could do the job just as well as she could. I'm not sure that was a very good idea at first. Anyway, whatever the case, we have three speakers, and formally, as everything is being recorded, let me remind you who we have. Camille, who presented the unsettled memory of Beirut's urban wrecks earlier in the day or in the week. As a reminder, Camille is a Beirut-based writer and policy advisor exploring cities, political economy, and climate change. I copy-pasted this from the official program. Camille is also a writer on contemporary urban challenges through literature. His latest book, published a couple of years ago, redefines the geological concept of subsidence to encompass human and social phenomena in Lebanon, particularly after the 4th of August 2020 explosion. Amos Bianchi examined Beirut, sort of, through Jorge Luis Borges' lenses. His paper on exactitude in science, reading Borges in Beirut 2025, discussed the link between fictitious. I wrote this yesterday, not exactly what you did today. Discussed the link between a fictitious one-to-one scale map once produced for a mad emperor. Very little of this map survived, except for some fragments, citing an equally fictitious Spanish. In Ammoun's own words, the metaphor serves as a methodological prompt for constructing a new conceptual map for designers, provisional, unstable, restless, yet free. So let me remind you that Amos holds a PhD in visual arts, media studies, it's already been said this afternoon, has taught and lectured on aesthetics, the aesthetics of new media and film history, and since May 2025, he is academic director of the Milan campus at the Rome University of Fine Arts, where he has taught and is still teaching film history. Finally, Micheal Kaethler presented a paper on Past Forward, Designing Memory, Making Futures, and he discussed the many-sided definitions and uses of time, memories of the past, experiences of the present, and visions of the future in several cultures in Asia, the Pacific, and in North and South America. He asked whether designers could metaphorically bend time itself, imagining not only possible futures, but even potential pasts for the objects they create. So Micheal, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that all good?
Yeah, it's all good.
Great.
All good.
Micheal is a researcher, curator, and a writer working on the crossroads of art, design, anthropology, and sociology. A PhD in architecture, a master in engineering in human settlements, and an MA in Slavonic studies, currently a research fellow at several institutions in Belgium, Holland, and Italy. Great. So, these three speakers, from three different backgrounds, are fascinated by time and its relation to everyday life, as well as how time influences professional creativities. But these three profiles seem to converge in such a way as to explore the links between design, I put it in capital letters, taking a broader sense, and that includes urban thematics and time. So, I do not, Dean Davie, thank you for coming. I do not feel it's necessary to go into quantum physics, nor into a brief history of time, nor into astrophysics and the 3 or 4 possible dimensions of time and their relationships with the 26 or so mathematical dimensions of matter. What is important is that our perceptions of time limits everything to a simple sequence of past, present, and future, at least in Western and Lebanese acceptations of the word. And most importantly, the present, which cannot really be understood scientifically, which is another Western concept, but let's leave this debate to philosophers and to other persons. These considerations are of no real importance here in Alba and in Dikwani today, as the main point is that the present is what we actually live in, with the past being just a memory and the future just an idea created in our brains. Both the past and the future have no existence, as time itself is not a, quote, real arrow hurtling through space. It's, however, essential for our material, artistic, literary, and creative existence. So let's go back to the round table. My first question to all three of you, and everyone else, will be about the place of the future in both design creativity, literature, cinema, and urban studies. How does the future fit in, or not, with your own professional or researchers' thematics above and beyond all the theoretical discussions we have had? Quite obviously, all objects, all cities, all stories have a past. Otherwise, there would be no present. But do we need the future? My second question, which will be far more ground to ground, and as there are a lot of students here, it will certainly interest them. My second question will be about how your thoughts on the sequence of past, present, and future could influence the teaching programs in the Faculty of Arts and Architecture, such as Alba. How can your ideas fit in with tomorrow's university? That is what I had to say, not much, as the floor is now open to discussions or to disagreements. The best way to agree to something is to start with a disagreement. So, who would like to start? Either in French or in English? Please do.
And I don't know. I'm short-sighted. Yes, I need it to read mine. So, in your introduction, you mentioned, just to start debating our perception of time, and who is the we behind this perception of time? Which community are we referring to? We, I'm Italian, Western human beings, we, the Chinese, we, the Latin American, we, the Lebanese people, we, the animals, we are, we, the living beings, we are, we, the a joke basically of the evolution of the universe, basically. So when we state we are always, as Spinoza was saying, every determination is a negation. We are stating that we are a community, but we are stating that someone else is out of our community. And so I'm wondering, okay, who we are, the we. 50 years ago, the we is a white man from Europe, from North America, from Australia. 50 years ago, no more than that. Now, who is the we? And because the issue of perception, who is perceiving what? And about past and memory. Past is not only memory, but past is also a removal, is also a trauma. I don't know if you believe in psychoanalysis or not. It's a great narration of human existence, one of the most powerful created. But basically, the past is what we have forgotten. And it's within us as a trauma. And the real movement of our existence is not what we remember, is what was so aggressive to our lives that we have removed it, we have concealed it in our unconscious, and it appears in dreams, it appears in pulsions, it appears in jouissance, and so on. And about the future, I studied with Richard Barbrook. He is a professor at Westminster University, who wrote a book. Unfortunately, I forgot completely the title. The Future. Basically, the title is The Owner of the Future. The future is basically the most powerful narration that wins in a certain time. So, what do I mean? After Second World War, Americans, sponsored by CIA, a new imaginary, and we were enthusiastic of that imaginary, starting from sponsoring Leo Castelli and pop art, or American Expressionism with Rauschenberg and so on. They created a new future landscape, and we were welcomed in this landscape. If you read the book, by Nicolas Negroponte, Being Digital, 1995, the most relevant book about IT culture of the 90s. It's completely written using the word we will. And that was a kind of desire that was becoming a reality. Now, to provide an example, will the vision of Elon Musk, I have to say this name, damn me, is the vision of Elon Musk the one that is going to win? I mean, the only solution for the future is escaping from planet Earth. How much money is the first person in the world reaching $500 billion? How much money and power we have behind that vision? Or it will be the vision of Xi Jinping. For instance, For the first time in history, 2 months ago at Shanghai, at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, we had China, India, Far East, and the Muslim world all together against us. Us, I mean a Western guy, okay? And last thing, and I close, your last question. In our school, we don't do speculative design. Our approach is genealogical. We start from contemporary times to trace back to old masters what is still relevant. Because we know, we are Italian, we have the traditional Achille Castiglioni and Rossi, Ettore Sozzas, and I can go on, okay? But they designed in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, they contributed, let me say, to ruin the world, even though some of them have the conceptual tools to understand that their operation were going to have a negative effect. So how to deal with the masters? Let's start from the contemporary times. We teach everything starting from 2025, and we go back to what can be said. So, I try to sum up.
So in other words, you're saying we should start today and go back to the past to understand what to do tomorrow.
I'm going to kind of answer through a question and also open to everyone. What is the purpose of time today? Literally, what is the purpose of it? So, for most of the world's tribes, time was about participating in the past through the present. It was about a constant dialogue with ancestors and building meaning in cyclicality. And the tribes that have linear notions of time, it's about being oriented towards a future. Teleos is very specific, whether it's in Christianity, it's about final redemption or salvation. And so there's a purpose in these. Today, in a lot of post-religious cultures, and that goes back to the question of who's we, and post-religious cultures can be Czech Republic, or it could be a household. What is the purpose of time if it's no longer moving towards a vision, a clear vision, which comes back, whether it's the vision of the Industrial Revolution and progress, or salvation, or about engaging or participating in ritual. What do we have today? What is the purpose of time for many people? And I don't think they have an answer. And I think that's why this theme, whoever chose it, was so salient, is that many of us are living in a timeless world because time has no purpose. So I'm putting it out to you, especially to three on this lovely squared, multi-dimensional setting. What is the purpose of time for you?
Well, thank you for introducing the circular versus linear. Yes, time was for a long time circular, and it's becoming more and more linear. Time was the coming back of the seasons, and with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and what we call progress, it became, yes.
You were allowed to interrupt each other.
Yes.
We've prearranged this. But do you think it is still linear? That's my question. Because there's this idea that today, at times, become point time. It's just random points, atomized. We've lost that linearity which gives meaning. So what do you think?
Yes, so it became linear, and it became, I'm going to come to the points, and maybe one point. It became linear, and it became linear because of progress and industrial revolution, and even more now that we can see the end of time with the climate crisis that is fundamentally existential, and maybe also with the rearmament and the renuclearization of the big powers. But more importantly, climate change, because it's out of control. Nuclear war is still under control, to a certain extent. But yes, so it became linear, and it also, we can see the end of it, or we can envisage and consider and contemplate the end of time. What end of time means is something else we can talk about, but some type of end of time. Now, in this line that is ending at some point where we see the end of time, there is just a point. And that was developed in an essay by a French Marxist philosopher called Jérôme Bachet. He called, the title of the book is Le Présent Perpétuel, the perpetual present. For him today, we are stuck in our, as you call it, Amos, infernal objects. So there is no more past. We are in the present. We receive thousands of notifications at the same time from what's happening in the war next door, what's happening in the birthday of our niece, what Micheal was eating yesterday that he posted on Instagram. I'm sure you do that at every meal, I know. So we are stuck in a perpetual present where there is no more past because we don't know history. It's becoming far and blurred. And we are not able anymore to project ourselves in a future. There's no more lendemain qui chante. There's no more lendemain at all, actually, because of, among other things, the climate crisis. So it became linear first. From circular, it became linear. Then we saw the end of the line. And now we're stuck in one point. We don't even see the end of the line, because if we really saw and acknowledge the end of the line, we would collectively act on it. And we are not. Despite every policy we're doing in climate, in the climate sphere, it's not working today.
Okay, so without any of your literature references, only with my California New Age influence, I just have a feeling that I would like to share, is that what if nature and time were so embedded with one another, it's the moment we step out as nature and define ourselves as something separate than nature, that we lost, we lost time because we were not anymore embedded in it, and this is maybe where we start trying to define it, to give it names, to give it frames, and it's might be also linked to what you're saying, because it's the moment that we stepped out of nature and time that climate crisis happened, because we abandoned it, and so the end of time came the moment we stepped out of this, and the moment we considered ourselves as entities that were independent from this, because the moment you are in it, you won't think about defining it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that we are in the present. It doesn't matter that it's the future. It doesn't matter. You're just in it. You're just being. So you don't even think of defining it. So this is I wanted to share.
If I may, I disagree with you. That's what for Ronde we thought about. I'm not sure whether time is linear, because you use the term we many times. We. I said, let's go back to Lebanon, let's go back to Beirut, let's go to Pequene. What is happening here, or with the students, or in Beirut? There are several times which are working simultaneously. There's the official time, and that may lead to the end of time, I don't know. But for those who are deeply religious, time is still a circle. This soteriological way of looking at life starts with, ends with, crucified by, goes up to heaven, comes back again next year at the same date, and it goes on and on and on. The prophet is the same thing, everyone's the same thing. We're going round and round in a liturgical calendar, which has no end by definition. So we have linear, we have that. But in the linear, we have all sorts of times. I read an article, I mentioned it to you the other day, I read an article a couple of days ago. When they opened the train service between Beirut and Damascus, there were 2, if not 3 times. There was the official time with an official clock on the keys of the railroads, stating the time of departure, and this time would be respected all along the line from Beirut to Damascus Central Station. And this was done by telegraph, so it was precise to the second. Outside of the building of the train station, it was Ottoman time. And Ottoman time starts at midnight, starts at sundown, and the Muslim way of measuring time was completely different. And the third time was the official time at the Saraya barracks, the clock tower, and they had another time, the real local time, which was coordinated with AUB, American University of Beirut, through astronomical observations, 3 times in the year, which time still exists. We all have these different times. What's happening tomorrow? Sorry, it's Good Friday, I'm going to Mass. We have a meeting tomorrow. Sorry, I can't. Ramadan. It's another way of looking at time. Does this time end? No, but we are juggling with 3 times in our minds, continuously. Flexible time, we're stuck in a traffic jam, we're liturgical calendars, we have the official times, we have the television time, we have the radio time. So how are we going to extract ourselves from the we? We is not one. We is myself, is complex. We have several we's in each individual. So we have different we's and different times.
Would you like to respond?
Quick note on Micheal, what you said. I speak French better than English, but I have the feeling that in English we say time for le temps and time for l'heure. Là, there are 3, il y a 3 heures quand le train a été. Il y a 3 heures, comme des fuseaux horaires, 3 heures différentes. L'heure de Beyrouth, l'heure ottomane, l'heure d'Amassen, l'heure du train, l'heure qui est en cours sur le train. Et le temps, c'est autre chose, if I'm not mistaken.
Oui, sauf que le temps continental, Western time, is this famous arrow which goes from way back, Alpha and Omega.
Yes, that's the temps. I just want to remind us all that a couple of years ago in Lebanon, when it was time to change to the summertime or tonight, yes. So when was it? 2 years ago. It was last year or the year before? Yes, it was Ramadan, and part of the political class decided to postpone the adjustment of time to summertime, to winter time, and the other part of the political class said, no, we're going to keep with our commitments with international time, etc. And we're going to. So some Lebanese were saying when we had a meeting, at which time are you talking about? Are you talking the time that we're changing or the time that we have not changed? And that shows also that time is political, ou l'heure au moins is political, and that in Lebanon it reflected the divide that we've been going through in Lebanon for probably thousands of years between following the West or following the East. It's just also something to remember, and it was an absurd moment where in the same place we had 2 times until they realigned. And that's for Beirut. And
don't forget the French had the same dilemma. Were they going to be aligned on Greenwich Mean Time or Parisian Mean Time?
And I think the Germans decided for them.
Each capital had its own time.
Yes.
Please.
I may add very, very shortly that in China, that covers 5 time zones, they have just one time. That's the time of Beijing, the capital town, so that Uyghurs wake up and at late morning, okay, and they are forced to do it because it's a form, this kind of time, it's a form of power, absolute power, to impose Beijing, that's mortal basically, to impose Beijing to a country on 1.5 billion people. And while Greenwich time, everything is based on Greenwich time, because the British Empire at the time hold 1/4 of the global population of the world, basically. I would like to add, regarding the purpose, to go back to that point. The end of time is not the first time. It was stated in philosophy. Christianism has already said clearly, okay, that our existential time is just a parenthesis in the eternal time of the existence of the soul, and the existence of the soul, and that linearity to salvation. I would like to say that has been dismissed. If I review at least the philosophy starting from Hegel, for instance, we reach the absolute spirit, that's the end of time. Let's go to Nietzsche, the eternal return. Since time goes back on itself for infinite time, what kind of decision should we take considering that this precise moment we are living right now it has already been lived infinite times and will be lived infinite times again. Another one, Heidegger. Heidegger tried to write the biggest failure of history of philosophy, Being and Time. 6 books. After the second book, he wasn't able to go on because facing the issue of time, he hadn't the language to understand what time was. Going to sociology, I'm quoting a lot, sorry, it's not, it's simply because now let's jump to the 90s. Fukuyama, the most misunderstood book ever, The Last Man and the End of History. Fukuyama was saying, okay, after the end of the conflict between West and East, that we don't have no history. I had the chance 5 years ago to interview Margaret Atwood, and I asked her, I was really stressed at the level, and I asked her why you wrote the Testament after so many years, after Handmaid's Tale. Because she told me that time is going back, that after Fukuyama in the 90s, Clinton, Blair era, okay, let's go shopping, history is over, and then 2001 came. And we are back to another kind of conflict, but because simply in the West we were ignoring, we were positioning ourselves in the middle of the world, while we have many different narrations. One of the most powerful is the one about the Silk Road, unifying Beijing to Tangier and to Marrakesh. Okay, and we can reconstruct the history of the world from this point of view. So going back to the issue of purpose of time, I totally do agree with Camille. The only irreversible line is the one of the destruction of the ecosystem in which we are currently living. That doesn't mean that the planet Earth will end. Simply we will have a different ecosystem maybe with different animals. Homo sapiens is, okay, Homo habilis is 1 million years old. We can see crocodiles. They are 180 million years old. We see plants. They are 800 million years old. We have a real small portion of the historical time. So, I look very negative. Actually, it's funny.
To put a humorous touch, for how long have designers been on Earth? 50 years? 100 years?
The argument is that's what designers like to say. Design is what defines humanity, but of course, practice of design is a very Western. But would you just kind of come back? I think I also presented on this idea that
Please talk in the microphone.
Competing temporalities. And I think, as you said, it's one thing that we experience every day, and we also habit, our body time, etc. From my perspective, also working with the students here on time was, I really, wanted them to explain, how do you inhabit time? What does it mean for you? And they struggle to see time outside of abstraction, outside of simply counting or measuring the dissection of the day. It was a major challenge. And so I think an argument is being made is, we have these competing temporalities. We might be embodying, religious time at a certain moment, but it's such a kind of heterotopic moment, we step outside of that, and it's gone. And I think that's this tension, bringing, like the Egyptians tried, bringing the kind of the bureaucratic time and the priestly time together, and you see it in the language related to climate change. You look at like the Russian political policies around climate change, and they don't talk about time in the same way that we talk about time in like Western Europe. They talk about time, they talk about climate and time in this kind of magical way. They borrow the language from orthodoxy. And so you do find this interesting kind of spirituality that comes into time through these places, but you don't find that in other discourses. It's pure science. And so time, we're going to address climate change, which you could say is a cultural, environmental, and temporal problem. But we're only addressing it through science, and science doesn't really work at either of those three perfectly well. And so I think it was 12 years ago when the World Council of Churches started participating in the big COP accords. And people said, okay, wow, maybe we need to listen to these religious bodies, not only for an environmental ethic, but also how they see the idea of purpose in time.
In other words, what you're saying is that we need to give meaning to time and not just measure it.
Exactly.
Meaning in the noble sense of the word.
Exactly. And so then the question is, how do, and for most of them, the idea of like, the present is the only holy time. It's the only time you can encounter the divine. So how then can we stretch the present? How can we make it thick? And to extend not only, to this one moment, but the present includes the dialogue with the ancestors, and the present also includes almost a morality of the future.
So how do you fit this into the university?
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. But, just to, quickly with the students, it was interesting to talk. They brought up their own faith in relation to time. And so how do you experience repetition, for example? And it's not simply, it's Wednesday at 5, I go and play soccer with my friends. No, it's certain rituals and certain tastes. And so it's still bringing in meaning or thickness to time, but it's a struggle. So, yeah.
Would you say that the students or the persons that you have met in Beirut do have this thickness of...
There's thicker time. There's thicker time here than where I inhabit in Italy, and where I inhabit in Italy is still thicker than when I work in the Netherlands. I would, and so yeah, absolutely. There's a density, partly because of the return, and that comes back to, einmal is keinmal, once is never. There is this cycle of events that people talk about, of crises, polycrisis, which I think, as awful as it is, we're living time again and again, and in that way, the Hopi Indians, the meaning of life is to repeat it enough times that the fabric that creates the tapestry finally is completed. And so, and each time we learn and we change and we become something more.
Yes, I see where Amos and Micheal. Sorry? No, go ahead.
Please, no.
Yes.
I just wanted to respond to that linear frame of time we have been kind of trained into, or we don't really have a choice if we want to function in this world but to function with, and bounce back to another notion of time, which is that stretchable time that maybe Davie talks about. But I think really the answer, I resonate with what Micheal was saying earlier, that nature is the reference. And for me, the most authentic notion of time I resonated with was discovering Native Americans, as we were talking, rituals of change of seasons. Like how 4 times a year they would gather around the medicine wheel of life and acknowledge the changes happening outside, and how they relate to the changes happening within us, and how, in the autumn, like in this season, we are past the summer exuberation and we come back into closer circle to prepare for the winter and come together around fires and storytelling and that natural cycle of life, and not only honoring it, but resonating and discovering how this is lived also within us, how different we can be in winter and go within, hibernating in our own ways and maybe planting seeds for what's going to come out in the spring. And honoring these cycles is maybe, I find, the boussole, the way to navigate, to go back to what you said, 1 foot here and 1 foot in connection with the depth of nature, which is also our true nature. So I did not find any other navigator, and I've been fascinated by this notion of time, which was the subject at my baccalaureate. And so I had to answer to that at 17-year-old, but I never stopped reflecting really about it and about some absurdities I feel in the way we experience time, or the way we all running out of time, or have we ever experienced, each one of us, our own sense of time? Like if we were left to our own sense of body clock timing and optimized rhythm, what would be our weekend like? That's the kind of reflections I've been sitting with, and thank you so much each for sharing your perspective, because it really expands my spiritual thought in that term.
No, it feeds into what I was going to say actually. It's that we are talking about cyclicality versus end of time, and you all mentioned, all 3 of you actually mentioned spirituality and religion, and that these 2 concepts have always been around. But for the first time in the first quarter of the 21st century, cyclicality and the end of times are now a question that has been taken by science and climate science more precisely. When I say climate science, it encompasses so many disciplines, including humanities. So for the first time, cyclicality and the apocalypse, in a way, is now studied by science, hard science and humanities. And there was another idea, but I forgot. It will come back.
Also, just in the sense of relating to the humanities, it made me think about this article by a woman named Vicky Noble, who argues that, our consciousness, humanities is really based on what it means to be human and our consciousness, and she argues, she hypothesized that, we became conscious moment we saw ourselves in time. And it was that moment when we saw how we aren't just living according to what's happening, but there's something like we saw time as external to ourselves. It's like looking in a mirror almost for a mammal. And so for her, it was this moment when we started marking and measuring the lunar cycles in relation to how it affected our bodies. So I thought that was interesting. It was like time was a type of mirror, existential mirror for humanity.
When you go back to the Bible, the first verses of the Bible.
In the beginning, no.
I think there was.
The God. Oh, it's late. That's John.
Who's read the Bible here?
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was John. No, yeah, there's a hover around.
No, the idea being that time started then.
Yeah. But then that's also interesting because to go back to the tribal perspective, but the Bantu people have a lot in common with a lot of quantum physicists, and that time doesn't exist unless there's activity.
Of course.
And that's
So once the human or whatever became conscious that there was something happening, he invented time, and with that, simultaneously, religion.
Yeah.
And the gods.
Yeah. I think it's Kurt Lewis who says, where there's a calendar, there was religion.
Necessarily.
What I wanted on my idea, the next idea was that science has always taught us or made us believe that progress was and growth were infinite. And now it has shifted to cycles and apocalypse. So it's something new that science is. Before we were opposing the cyclicality and apocalypse that the religious narrative gave us to the eternal progress and infinity of growth that science would propose us. Now science is also telling us that there are cycles and there's an end. And to go back to the cycles and the fact, you said nature, and before Amos said something interesting, that we are also part of nature. We are nature. Nature should not be, since Davie, we should not even use the term nature unless we include this amphitheater in it. We are not in nature, this is nature also. And so it's the idea that we are an organism that is changing the climate of the planet because of our behavior, but this happened before. Millions of years ago, there was not enough oxygen for big animals to live on the planet, and some bacteria with photosynthesis transformed, and they are even smaller than us, transformed the atmosphere in order to make it the atmosphere that we have today, the composition of the air that allows bigger animals. And we are reverting this process, so we're doing nothing new. The only new thing is that we are conscious of it and trying not to do it. And I think, in my opinion, failing until now.
Sorry, it's out of the boundaries of this discussion so far, but may I ask you, our moderator, to introduce another topic that's really connected to schools. In the last years, I'm 50, I feel I'm very, very far from Gen Z. It's not a matter I'm better than them. No, the point is this one. I was used to satisfy my desire on a longer perspective. I mean, I request something, okay, the answer could come 1 week later, 2 weeks later, something like that. It was the way I was taught at university. I sent a paper, and after 1 month, I received from my supervisor all the paper. Now, the satisfaction, I provided an anecdote. I planned a course of interior design. It was based on 2 days, Monday morning, Thursday morning, okay? And the class asked me to split the hours from Monday to Friday because the interval between Monday to Thursday was too long in order to get a review from the professor. So this need induced by social media, I completely refuse to give my WhatsApp to students. I only talk with them by email and one-to-one appointment, no other means at all. But in case we don't reply immediately, we are pushed, we are contacted by phone, they look for us on WhatsApp and so on. And we have several books about it, about the fact that Gen Z is willing a satisfaction, a simultaneous satisfaction of desire. And I want to ask you, how do you deal with it? Because without satisfying the desire, you got negative grades in the questionnaires, so that the managing director asked me why students are so negative with you, and so on. And my conception of time is completely associated to desire, is completely different from their conception of time, and I have no clue how to deal with it. If we have students, maybe. The question is, if you write to a professor of yours in email, do you write emails, or they have some boomer stuff? Very rarely. Okay, what do you do? In order to talk with your professors, what do you do? You? What's up? Snapchat, right. My younger kid is on Snapchat. Okay.
I can give you some hints of how to react. I do not have, I repeat, I do not have a telephone. It does not exist. So the students say, why don't you use WhatsApp? I say, what's WhatsApp? And they look at me with open eyes and say, you don't use WhatsApp? And I say, no. So what do you do in life? I say, I live my life. Yes, well, what's going to happen if you walk outside the street and something happens, you can't phone anyone? I said, so there's always someone I can contact. Yes, but if we need you at 2 o'clock in the morning? And I said, I will always reply to your emails, always. And sometimes the emails are 25 lines, 30 lines long, more if necessary, copy, paste, or attach document. But I will never use WhatsApp or any other variant of WhatsApp. And they are shocked, because obviously I'm a dinosaur. So the answer is, and I think the only answer is to get the students back to writing, which is a slow process, an intellectual process in minds, of creating words, and not just letters to signify the meaning of words, ASAP. But to let them write and to coordinate between their brains and their hand, which is basics of human beings, by the way. And this process is enriching because there's always a feedback. What have I written? I can check what I've written, and I can augment or I can nuance what I have just said, instead of this brutal one-word or three-word sentences which lead us nowhere. So their relationship to time is not my relationship to time. They don't understand it. But once they get into the mode of listening and not taking notes on their telephone, which is now forbidden, at Alba, this is the big boss in the headquarters, during classrooms, no telephones. Laptops, yes, as long as you take notes, but not to watch an next movie. Okay? So they have to concentrate, they have to listen, they have to take notes by hand if necessary, but they have to listen. They're not distracted. You may have noticed in Beirut, 99% of people who drive also for that, and that includes lessons, which is amazing. I don't know how to do it, but they do it. But they have a brain divided into two somehow, which is something I do not have. I have one brain that's working more or less well, but not that well. So how they do it, I don't know. Is it going to impact the level of thought and the impact of how time is perceived? No doubt. Is it beneficial? My opinion, no. Is it leading us anywhere? My opinion, no. Because suddenly when reality hits you in the face, and you need time, you have cancer, it's not going to be cured tomorrow morning, back in 6 months. What is 6 months when you have life? Can you imagine what 6 months is? We can't get it on WhatsApp. You have to live through 6 months, or 1 year, or 10 years, or whatever it is. So this is some sort of existential question among the generation you mentioned, where they have been disconnected from time, which is perhaps can be explained by technology or by the situation in Beirut. I mean, sometimes the difference between living and not living is just a question of seconds. And this wasn't my second, so I'm still here. Could it be that? I don't know. Have I answered?
I have a small intervention. It's not an answer, but just a digression if you want. What we are talking about here always passes through a certain medium, which is word, entertainment, language, etc. Des mots. On passe par des mots pour ça. Je crois, sorry, I'm switching to French, je crois qu'eux ont dépassé les mots. Ça veut dire que la façon de parler ne passe plus peut-être une nouvelle génération par le mot ou la phrase ou le langage écrit. Et c'est ce que je remarque de plus en plus dans les jeunes, peut-être pas encore chez eux, mais chez les plus jeunes. Il y a certains outils technologiques qui leur permettent d'échanger des idées ou des concepts à travers peut-être des gestes qui font qu'ils n'ont plus besoin des mots et donc ils n'ont plus besoin de répondre et peut-être perdre comme ça cette façon d'échanger et de dialoguer et donc la construction. Je vous donne un exemple qui est Bump que je viens de découvrir où il s'agit de, une fois que tu bumpes ton téléphone à quelqu'un d'autre, c'est bon, il y a toute une série d'informations, mais ça où tu as été, qu'est-ce que tu fais, c'est quoi ton programme. Il n'y a pas un seul mot échangé, mais il s'affiche. Et donc, peut-être que nos moyens de communication, justement, sont en train d'être dépassés, pas par quelque chose de moins bon ou de plus mauvais, mais de complètement différent, qui fait que nous, on est sur une autre dimension. Vous voyez, je ne sais pas quoi dire. Je ne sais pas si tu es d'accord.
They share a lot on Google Doc, and they write simultaneously, so it helps them a lot because when we have something I ask them to do, they work a lot on Google Docs, so it's live for me. I can check if they're writing well, and this helps me a lot. And also, during my class, Culture of the second year, we always have 10 minutes of, I get into them, so I ask a lot of questions. So what did you do this weekend? We need to talk and to open up before having this 1 hour that is really drastic for a Gen Z of 20 years old. I have smaller kids. I know the level of the span is 40 minutes maximum. So for a class of 1 hour and a half, you have to get in. This is what I do, and I think it works. You can ask them. We have, they are in my class, we have 15 minutes of, we need to talk and to rest first, and to breathe for 10 minutes and have a cool conversation. And then you get into, so it's like when you go to Europe, see, it's a genre de transfert. And it's important to have that because you engage a kind of une relation bienveillante, which is very important during these days, surtout when you have very conflictual relations between families and people are really suffering and the parents are some kind of burden for younger generation, so I can feel it, and with all the crises we are living through, sometimes university is like a second home. So this is how I perceive and then the WhatsApp is not really needed anymore. So Google Doc is the solution, or any other interface that can be live en temporalité, which is a catastrophe, but it's okay because they have to write.
If I may, I could respond, build on that, and respond to your question of design. So, in Italy now, elsewhere in the world, you have this concept of slow food, right? So it's really thinking about how you plant, grow, and nurture food, cultivate it, how you prepare it, and then how you consume it. And so, you know, it was really nice, it influenced lots of food cultures, and then it moved into other fields. So you have now slow science and slow feminist scholarship, for example. My wife is part of a slow feminist scholarship group, and one of the some of the key principles are relationality. It's about types of entanglements, how we're part of all these systems, and how we can reflect on it and give them time to emerge. Otherwise, we don't see them. And so, I guess what I keep thinking now is, what does slow design look like? Is it about really focusing on that practice of cultivating, nurturing the material, focusing about every single step and relationality involved in all the steps, and the kind of scalar dynamics and temporal. So that, again, coming back to this thickening part. And so maybe that's the next masters that needs to be designed is slow design masters, which would be amazing. A mixture of all very old professors and young students.
Even though you're talking about slow design, June and Rabi need to speculate to understand slow design. So I'm a pro speculate. I love speculating. It's so funny. It's becoming a tool. I don't really believe in it, but I think that when you speculate, you go back to the future, and it's really funny for students to. So they created a new word, and then they come back, and this is a tool that's really fun now, but because this generation is not us, and we need to look at them and to respect them, and they have those new tools. We can't forget that they have a phone, AI, blah blah blah, and we have to find a solution. It's only a tool. When they understand that, I think it's a great. They really can manage differently, and it's a tool. It's like Illustrator and Photoshop. It's not more than that. So.
Thank you. I'm extremely interested in this notion of slowness, but the point is that the world is pointing in another direction. Now, currently in Greece, they are debating a law to extend to 13 hours a day the length of the work. Okay, we are going back to Charles Dickens, more or less. Slow. I had another element. It's not myself. It's Thomas Piketty. It's Satiscicato. Now, the so-called third world is asking to be paid. Okay, and so the profits, the third and the second world, mostly the first, were generating from the low salaries of the third world must be compensated by what? Efficiency, if we can produce it, or again, time. And another point, we have a responsibility as educators. Students, we suppose we must, let's say, provide them the tools to survive in the job market. I do completely agree with the idea of slow design. Okay? And I teach cinema. Kubrick made standard design student is not Stanley Kubrick or is not Martin Bass. The point is that he cannot sell for 150,000 euros a piece like Ron Harad because he's not Ron Harad. Okay? So the point is, should we take into account that the timing of the market is different from of the job market is different from the timing of the school and it's different from the timing of life. Listening to you, I was asking myself, when was the last time I had, let's say, an entire day, let's say 8 hours without any appointment? I don't know. Actually, I really don't know.
My question is, does it matter if they don't follow the market? Does it matter? Does it matter if they don't get rich? I mean, if they go to school to learn how to do money or how to be the person they're going to be. So this is my question, does it matter?
Is anyone from the marketing office here? No, I totally understand. Okay, understanding philosophy, okay, that was the perspective. It's not up to us, okay, whether we did it's not up to us to provide you a job. We are here to provide you knowledge, okay, your critical thinking, your, let's say, you as a good citizen or okay? Not a job. The point I had to the master. But anyway, I do completely understand.
So we had a lecture with Zuruna. I'm mentioning him a lot today. It's Serge Harfouch. He's working on seed sovereignty. And he's working with eco-agriculture. So he told the audience, he said, if you want to get rich, don't do that. Don't do that. He spent 20 years of his life building this. And he has been able to save 30 to 15 species that were under extinction because he created a network. You were doing that. Okay, so what matters? But who doesn't really get paid? I mean,
in Italy, for instance, for the first year after graduation, internship cannot be paid. I can name at least 3 of the most famous studios of Milan. I don't name them since I'm recorded. Who doesn't pay once, and they are famous worldwide. One of them is all the sign here, and very shop here. And they don't pay €1 single euro for during the internship, and when they hire people, they hire them with a part, so without any kind of coverage, health system, and so on, for 1,200 euros per month. Now rent in Milan is around 800 euros. So, being in the field of the art of design, I ask myself this question. What happens the day after they graduate?
Please do.
As a student, it's not just me, there's a constant discourse of, like, especially being in eco-social design where there's this imaginary pressure to save the world, and it's this idea that also these jobs of saving the world don't tend to pay much, if anything. You get some good feeling inside, but there's a reality, and there's a reality of the system, this 1 foot in the system, 1 foot out. There needs to be, like, I appreciate when the school offers some guidance of what it's like in the real world and how to step out that day after graduation to be prepared.
But the real world is what we have created. So if you change the value system, you would be creating another reality, and then the real world would be different. So are you investing in keeping the same reality, or are you investing in people who can change the reality?
Which is the subject of our international conference, Ronde at Ammoun. Okay. I would like to just ask you a question. You worked on the question, on the thematic, on the concept of subsidence, which is a very slow movement at the bottom of the oceans, creating strata after strata of limestone or Mars or anything else, not granite. And you expanded that to Beirut as being sort of sedimentation, slow sedimentation of all sorts of things. And yet simultaneously we have microseconds which you're alive when you're dead, the building exists or does not exist, or long civil war, 15 years, which is nothing in the geological time scale. How do you fit all of these time scales together to understand a city such as Beirut, or any city in fact, any city in the world?
Yes, it's actually I wanted to conclude on one sentence I start with, and I'm going to go back to your question. There is this little book that I wrote in 2020, before the port explosion, and it was published after. Octobre Liban. It starts with this sentence: Demain est mort, il faut réinventer le présent. And that's it. It's at the core of what we were talking at the beginning. And I wrote this sentence because I felt, well, first, in Lebanon we don't have, as you know, historical memory. Our school books ends in 1946. So we don't have a past. We don't have a common past. And given the subsidence, the various catastrophes, the dramas that we are living one after the other, it's difficult for us, for Lebanese people, to project ourselves in the future. And I talk about this présent. In 2019, when we were in the street, for a few months, we felt that we had a common past. Maybe it was an illusion, but there was a feeling for all of us in the streets that, especially that for the first time we were in the streets in the whole country, not only in Beirut, that we had a common past, and that's why we were here, and we started to dream of a common future. So there was a moment that lasted a few months, a couple of months, but not even a few months, where all of a sudden we had a past, we had a future, and we had a present. And very quickly all of that vanished because of the various catastrophes that came. The first one was the financial and monetary crisis, then came the explosion, then came the shortages, where we wondered if we were going to be able to buy a bottle of water because there was not enough electricity to put the water in the bottles at the factory. So it was really that. And everything closed again. I mean, it came back to this prison. It works. And that's when also I thought of subsidence as a concept to counter the resilience narrative. So resilience comes from physics actually, and it is it's a material that is resilient is a material that takes back its shape after a shock. And I was thinking, we're not that, despite everything we're going through, but we're not taking back our shape after all the shocks that we went through. And that's where I saw subsidence, which is the irreversible thinking of the ground, as the action of several shocks that are not being healed. Exactly, and times. We have some shocks that last 15 years, others a fraction of a second. Civil war versus Beirut port explosion. But sur le temps long, they are all the same at the end of the day. And every time we continue a bit lower, un peu plus affaissé. I presented the concept at l'Association Libanaise de Psychanalyse, and they told me what you're describing exists actually in psychoanalysis, and it is called pathological adaptation, adaptation pathologique. And then I took back this concept with me at home, and I thought to try to adapt it to subsidence and take an example that is completely outside psychoanalysis. And I looked at electricity. In 2020-2021, the electricity crisis was so bad that Beirut was totally dark at night. We were forced to use our phones to walk in the streets, and from the mountain you would not see Beirut. You would see Beirut as a continent, black continent. And very quickly, in 2022-23, Beirut was totally lit again. Everything, the restaurant, the streets, it was like the Beirut we knew before the crisis. From outside, somebody will tell you, this is resilience. Look how resilient you are. After everything you went through, you have electricity everywhere again. But no, it is not resilience because we're not back to what it was before. It's pathological adaptation because we are working on 80%, 90% diesel, which is a pathology. Which first it's an infrastructural and urban pathology, but also a physical pathology. We're getting sick because of the air we are breathing because of generators. And yeah, so it's also that kind of thing that I try to prove.
So all of these times fit into each other. And all of these times fit in also in models, coming back cyclic and linear. So we have an infinite number of times mixing in infinite numbers of qualities, mixing in with a large number of theoretical models. So the question is, what is time?
When it comes to trauma, it is time is the healing time also when it is possible. In Lebanon, it's not possible because every catastrophe erases and buries the previous one. In 2024, during the war, we forgot about the Beirut port explosion. With the Beirut port explosion, we forgot the monetary crisis and the loss of our savings. So every time we forget, but we don't fix and we don't heal and we don't. I compared in the article that is going out before the end of the year, I compared these several shocks to the ultimate shocks, and I read Primo for that, and his recount of the drama of the Holocaust. And this is one huge, collective and individual, irreversible, irrémédiable, qui ne comporte aucun remède, shock, drama, that, according to him, you never get out of. Even when the drama is over, you continue to live and relive this drama, and nothing happens. There's no resilience. That's not what we have in Lebanon. We have relatively small shocks. A financial shock is catastrophic at the individual level. The Beirut port explosion is catastrophic, but it's nothing like a wiping out, or maybe what we see in Gaza today. I don't know. It's really wiping out. So these relatively small shock at the generational level, but huge at the individual level, make us subside, but not die. And forget also the previous shocks. We seem okay now. We're not, when you look at Beirut, again, to take the image of the lights, it's totally lit. But how? This is the question.
I'd like to address that, actually, having done educational films for the Trauma Resource Institute in Los Angeles. I discovered very interesting facts about time related to trauma, because as we know, as all of us in Lebanon have some sort of PTSD, post-traumatic symptoms related to one of the traumas. Something called a time capsule. Time capsule is actually how a sound, a smell, any of the somatic senses can send us back immediately into this time of the explosion, time of where you were when the war started, that war, this tragedy, and how somehow our body clock get triggered. We were just sharing how I discovered accidentally breaking my ankle that actually a military plane triggered like a complete cramp in cellular memory that triggers. So these, when they are layered, as you say, one tragedy after the other, create some sort of multidimensional trauma coping mechanism or post-traumatic symptoms where we can get caught in this time capsule. I remember I attended or filmed vets in Iraq mentioning how 5 years later in Los Angeles, seeing a sign the other way around on the freeway would send them off back to Baghdad, for instance. So that's a very interesting, notion of time that we can be caught or brought back into that closed capsule. That I'd like to contrast with another notion of time that a lot of indigenous tribes have around the world, which is time travel, and how they are able to actually access through ritual and ceremony other times that are maybe simultaneous but that we can imagine in the future or in the past, but often they go in the future to fetch solutions for our present problems. And last but not least, I would like to just say something about resilience, because I hear so much in Lebanon, people refusing to be labeled as resilience because enough is enough, and it is enough, mind you. But resilience, actually, what it is the natural instinct that we have built into our body to want to re-regulate the nervous system. That's what resilience is. It's not, it doesn't mean that actually we digested what happened on August 4 or we are healed. It's that our body is wired to try to kick back in a nervous system that's going to regulate and help us continue coping. So there's a pathology in wanting to throw ourselves into the next action because we have such an instinct of rebuilding that we launch ourselves into action, and we may postpone all the enormity of the emotions or the shock absorbed and shove it under the carpet, until we are better disposed or we have time to address these things, because the fast pace we live our life in doesn't allow us to take the time and address what happened on August 4th, or have enough healing modalities to dive into that. But resilience is a natural thing the body will try doing, and if we actually have confronted too much of a trauma, we are not able to do it by ourselves, and this is really advised to seek help with that, because there's something I discovered through the Trauma Research Institute that is the somatic approach to trauma and to the cellular memory that is in the body and that may be stuck in a memory capsule, in a time capsule, that where it needs to, you need to be guided to reopen that place. The problem we have here is we never reach that safe zone to allow ourselves to do that. Since we are in constant survival mode, it took me going to California and finally finding a place, heaven, where I allowed all these, old wounds to come up, to really address them and work on them. I find it very difficult to do that in an environment where you are constantly threatened by the same things. I mean, it's not in the past, it's still in the present. It can blow anytime, who knows?
Well, we've just about explored every facet of time, from psychoanalysis to geological concepts exported to resilience, to tribes here, there, and everywhere, each with their own definitions, philosophical approaches, as well as very complicated but fascinating approaches to what time is and how it is used, as well as questions from this wonderful public. All of them, thank you. If there are no more questions, it's 20 past 5, 20 past 4. The time is. Shall we close this session? You can, of course, continue outside as long as you wish, but I think we've covered most of the points. The thing that really interests me at the end of this small cycle of conferences and exchanges is that in a faculty called Alba, the students and the teaching staff are thinking about these questions. They are not in the box of architecture or the box of interior design or in the box of urban studies. We are thinking here about something which is far wider, far larger, but which has implications at all levels, from teaching, first year undergraduate students right up to master's degrees, also the research undertaken by the faculty staff, and also this dialogue with society. So time has apparently helped in this moment of discovery of possible links between each and all of us. As I often say to my dean, I am not an architect, I am not an interior designer, I have nothing to do with everything that is taught in this university. I'm a geographer, they're the best. I'm a geographer, and somehow I feel at ease with these discussions because each and all of you are working on the same thematic of how time creates cities, as an urban geographer, creates meaning, creates religion, creates everything which is important to our lives as human beings. So this is one of the main ideas I feel that should be developed in a faculty such as this one, and encourage the students to think, and get out of the box, and think outside of design, think outside of architecture, and then come back to architecture, and come back to design. Of course, we are not in an anarchist society, not yet. But it seems important, this going forward and going back, going forward and going back, this future, present, with an eye on the past. We talk about genius, an eye on the past and an eye on the future. And the other one was? Kairos and Chronos. Also, which has the same way of looking at life and looking at the meaning of life, and not thinking about multivitamins. This is another discussion. Okay, so thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in this exchange of ideas. We may still have disagreements, but that's how research goes forward. We may agree, that's how research goes forward too. And inshallah, the word is interesting, inshallah, has nothing to do with time. Inshallah, next year, or a year later, we'll have another meeting and we'll see how these ideas have evolved and have changed each and all of us in our way of being and our way of thinking. Thank you.